Hello, everyone. My name is Susan Jarboe, and today we're going to be talking about how we grow and change as spiritual beings. I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists, Cathy Richman, Cathy Cronin, and also Reverend Linda Burdett. Before we get into our evolution as spiritual beings, let's start with a prayer. Our Heavenly Parent, help us to study and apply your wisdom to our lives each day. Help us make this session a discipline of the mind and heart, empowered by your Spirit, transforming us each day more and more into your likeness. Thank you for your tender mercy and love, ever leading us onward. Amen. This evolutionary model, if we might call it that, comes from one of my favorite places, the Center for Action and Contemplation. And Richard Rohr often offers messages of his own and sometimes messages of other people. This happens to be his basic overview of the stages of spiritual development. And this, you will see, ties into our basic psychological needs. Now, what I'd like my panelists to do, as well as those of you watching, is to get a piece of paper and a pencil or something to write with. And I'm going to be talking about 9 stages. And so if you could make a note or two on a stage that really strikes you, perhaps it's a stage you remember that was particularly meaningful, or perhaps it was a stage where you lingered forever and you thought you were never going to progress. And as I say that, let me give you one caveat. Stage models are based on probabilities. This is not a lockstep, mandatory, deterministic set of steps. And often when we run across stage models, we think, oh, if I didn't go through that stage, there's something wrong with me. That's not the case at all. Human behavior is never 100% predictable. We begin with the very first stage, which is my body and self-image are who I am. And this is where, if you're familiar with Maslow, we focus on our own security, safety, and defense needs. And it's easy to think of ourselves as children or children we know, and they identify very much with their bodies. The second stage, my external behavior is who I am. And so this is where we learn things like, well, beauty is inside, not outside. And we need to look good in front of other people. We want to hide anything we don't like about ourselves or that we think other people are not going to like about us. And this is where Richard Rohr claims that our shadow side begins to emerge because there are things we are keeping from other people. We're not always authentic. Then we move on. My thoughts and feelings are who I am. And here, as spiritual beings, we begin to take pride, actually, when we do something well. And we don't see that when we pat ourselves on the back or say, oh, I'm so glad I thought of doing that. We do not see the self-serving role that sometimes our spiritual thoughts can have. And I remember when I was learning centering prayer through Contemplative Outreach of San Diego, uh, the Father Justin would comment on people who were studying contemplation and were engaging in meditation and so on. And they'd go around with their noses in the air saying, "Oh, I'm a contemplative," which is totally antithetical to spiritual development. And sometimes we need a big shock of some sort to move us beyond this stage. Now, finally, well, not finally, but step 4, we begin to see that our deeper intuitions and felt knowledge in my body are who I am. And this is where we realize how much of God is in us. And this is a real breakthrough, that, oh, this deep feeling I have with God. And Richard Rohr says that one of the issues is people want to linger here. It's like there's a certain ecstasy when you discover your deeper relationship with God. And so they don't really move on from that. Again, it's a focus on the self. The 5th stage, and one that has received a lot of attention, is when we think our shadow self is who I am. This is when we realize how weak we are. This is when we realize we have done evil, bad things. This is when we realize how fundamentally uncivilized we really are. And this can be a very uncomfortable state. And so this is where we may engage in a lot of prayer. To move out of this stage, we need guidance and grace. And sometimes, Rohr claims, when this happens, this dark night of the senses, some people retreat. They don't move on. They retreat back to previous stages of development that were more comfortable. Stage 6, I am empty and powerless. And this, Richard Rohr says, this is called God's waiting room, but it's often known as the dark night of the soul. And at this point, we may try to save ourselves by superior behavior, morality, prayer technique, and all of it fails us. It doesn't work. And all we can do is to ask and wait and trust. The false self is dying in a major way. Stage 7, I am much more than who I thought I was. And this is where, if we can reach this stage, it's the permanent waning of the false self and the ascent of the true self as the center of our being. It feels like an absence or a void, even if a wonderful void. St. John of the Cross, who is famous for writing about the dark night of the soul, calls this a luminous darkness. And here's where we grow, not through knowing, not through understanding, but only by loving and trusting. The 8th stage is that the Father and I are one. Here there is only God. There is nothing we need to protect, promote, or prove to anyone, especially ourselves. Our false self no longer guides the ship. We have learned to let grace and mystery guide us, still without full, if any, comprehension. And the ninth stage, I am who I am. I'm just me, warts and all. We are now fully detached from our own self-image and living in God's image of us, which includes and loves both the good and the bad. We experience true serenity and freedom. This is the peace the world cannot give, and full resting in God. So, those are the 9 stages, and maybe you have experienced several of them, and maybe your experience is what Richard Rohr describes, or maybe it isn't. I would like to open this up to the panel, and feel free to react to this stage model in any way you like.
I'll go. I thought this was very interesting, especially the order of progression with them, where it starts, my body and self-image is who I am. So it's like being of this world, to the 9 stages. The Father or 8, the Father and I are one, and I am who I am. It's now getting to that higher spiritual self. So it's like seeing that difference of those stages is like, what stage along my path in life have I gotten to? And, it's just, and then I can see where I bounce back and forth, where my thoughts and my feelings are who I am. And, it's like, and then there's times that I feel very connected with God, and that I'm walking, in that spirit. And so I think sometimes I have to sort of go, when am I feeling disconnected? Like I'm empty and powerless, is sort of like that time is like, how have I disconnected myself from spirit within? How have I gone more to this materialistic ego self than the spiritual self, and being, centered and focused? I thought this was really very, very interesting, and a good little tool to sort of at times asking myself, where am I on the path of this, and how do I, how am I maturing? Because sometimes I'm really mature, and other times I'm just this defiant little kid that wants it my way, and it's like God's going, okay, I understand, But it just definitely enlightened me to know that we're complex, and we, sometimes can stay totally centered. And I think that's where taking, that time to meditate and to be present with spirit and to call upon spirit really helps to see that there's something much more in our lives than what we can do here today. So, thank you, Susan.
Sure. One of the things I suspect, although I don't know this for certain, is that this model doesn't just come out of Richard Rohr's head, that he is basing this, and not just on his own experience, but what he has observed of human beings and how they evolve. And so I think this is based on a lot of us, not just pulled out of the air theoretically. Other comments? Cathy?
Yeah, I'll go. I wrote down all of them, and my first thought was number 3, thoughts and feelings are who I am. And I thought, no, that's where I'm at. But then as we went along, I settled on number 7. I am much more than who I thought I was. And I think that's where I'm at now. I strive to be number 10. Number 9, I am who I am, just me, and living in God's image of us. I strive to be there. But I realized that as I was looking at each of those, that I had gone past number 3 to 7, and I'm going to keep this list because I think it's something that it's a good little map to have and to sort of follow, and see, which direction do I go? Do I go backwards or do I keep moving forward? So thank you for sharing this.
Sure. Well, and sometimes we go in circles. We'll have 3 stages that we go through over and over again before we can finally get past them. And that leaves you, Reverend Linda.
And as always, I have so much to say. As you were going through this, I really felt like I kind of grew up in number 2, meaning my family of origin. Yeah, number 2 sounds about right. And you said my external behavior is who I am, and I kind of took that perception into, if I can make you believe it, then I can believe it too. And it reminded me of being told over and over again, don't act up or they'll think bad of me. They'll think I'm a bad mom, or I can't handle you, or you made me look bad. And it was just really interesting that I related that right into my childhood. As you were talking, it's like, oh yeah, the don't talk, don't tell rule, if you don't say anything, it's not really happening kind of stuff. My thoughts and feelings are me. Working in the recovery population, especially residential treatment, we were forever reminding the patients, the clients, that thoughts are not facts, feelings are not facts, thoughts are not facts, because that's definitely a lock-in place. I had trouble with your number 4. My intuition is me. And when you were talking about it, it really brought that back. I was pretty sure I was crazy, and that still small voice was some kind of drug-induced psychosis. So it took me a long time to trust my intuition. And eventually I started talking about it. Something feels not right to me. What do you think? And again, that was going back to number 2, my external behavior. It took me a long time to trust my intuition. The shadow is me. Yeah, I could relate to all of these. I can say I generally stay in number 9 and number 1. So I'm at the top and the bottom of the ladder. I tend to stay pretty solidly in number 9 unless I start worrying about body image and my weight, getting older and my aches and pains. So seriously, I'm pretty good at I am who I am. Thank you, God. Good and bad. You said shadow is me. I said, yep, that's part of me. That's absolute. And then you said I am who I am. And I said, yeah, that's really where I try to stay, but I know I tilt right out of it when I go back to 1. So that's probably more about me than you needed to know, but I really enjoyed learning about these different levels. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your comments and your reaction to number 4. You reflected just what Rohr said, that it's a breakthrough and it is so helpful, but we can't remain there. What was the point he was making? But I can see, you'll recall I said people can stay in one stage for a long time, and we do what we need to do. Well, thank you, panel, for all of your remarks. And to our audience, I would love to know what you thought of these stages. And so you can give us feedback if you like and tell us what stage you are in. You can put your feedback in the comments section. If you liked this discussion and are interested in more, you can become a subscriber. And that way you'll be notified of when discussions are coming up. If you thought this particular discussion might be useful to someone else, be sure to share it with them, pass it on. And if you have ideas for us, we would love to hear them. As panelists, we come up with topics, but we would love to have other topics suggested to us. Sometimes we run low on ideas. We'd also love to have you join us, either for one discussion or maybe as a regular panelist. What is on your mind? What is it that you want to talk about? And Cathy today, Cathy Richman, gave us an excellent example. If you want to contact us, that is at the end. You will see ways in which you can contact the church. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you again. Bye.
Thank you for joining us, and let's stay connected and grow in spirit. We are on Facebook. Search for Unity Church of El Cajon and follow us and like our posts. You can reach us on YouTube at Unity Church of El Cajon. Please subscribe to our channel, watch our videos, and leave comments which can help us improve. We are on the web at unityofelcajon.org. Email or call our church office to receive our weekly newsletters, which lists all of our activities and opportunities to learn and grow together.